Hello everybody, Andy here again. This is one of those stories you're never quite sure whether you should be telling it or not for reasons that may well become apparent. But something that came out of a dream that I had last night, quite a vivid dream, and it's not that type of dream, don't worry. But it sort of came out of something that I did yesterday as well, because yesterday, if you've seen, I did a video about Save the Hastings Pier protest march that I went on to, and yesterday evening there was the big bonfire celebrations here in Hastings, and I went down there on my own because everyone else was doing other different things. And obviously I've been before and watched it from different places before, but this time I actually went up into the old town, which is the older part of town, and sort of narrow streets, etc., where the procession starts, and there's always a better atmosphere up there. And that's exactly what happened. I actually saw the procession 3 different times, I think, and it brought back sort of childhood memories, and I shall probably come on to those again as well in a minute, because of the sort of narrow streets. I saw the very beginning of the procession itself. You've got all these flaming torches, you've got drummers, people dressed up in all these different costumes, and you've got bonfire societies from right across Sussex, etc. So I watched the first part of it, the sort of beginning of the march, and then I walked across into the high street to see well, it sort of does a circuit around parts of the town, and saw that it come round once again. So I suppose I was cheating, really, being a bit greedy and watching it more than once. But it's a great spectacle anyway. But when you see it in amongst those sort of narrow streets, especially the second time I watched it, because I was right at the front, but I got there just as somebody else arrived, and we were stood, and there was plenty of other people about, as you can imagine. It's coming past, and with all the smoke, the drumming, because you can hear this drumming coming from a long way away, because there's not just one set of drummers, there's 5, 6, 7, well, whatever, sort of different sets of drummers sort of spread throughout, and then all the drumming, you've got like a samba type band, the same one that were on the video that I did about the pier, and you've also got other sort of more rhythmical, sort of bassy sort of drums, I suppose, and it's a more sort of menacing sort of feel to it, and that sort of hypnotic beat rather than a sort of a dancey Latin rhythm. And that's one of those things about those bonfire celebrations that takes me back to when I was a child. In fact, where I used to live, their particular society was there last night. Once again, still in East Sussex. And I remember as a child watching these flaming torches and watching these people go by, and and it had that sort of slightly sort of menacing feel to it, and it comes from that whole, the gunpowder plot, obviously that type of thing. There's a lot of religious stuff in there somewhere, and there's all these other bits and pieces that have got into the whole sort of folklore and the whole idea of the sort of the bonfire celebrations and the gunpowder plot celebrations and all those type of things. And there's a tradition that's built up, and people blacking faces and wearing different types of costumes, and it can seem sort of quite menacing at times. And I remember that as a child being even quite sort of frightened. As it happens, whilst I was watching the first part, at the start, there was a guy behind me with his young son, on his shoulders, and I don't know how the age of the child, maybe a couple of years old or something. The father obviously was loving this and watching all these people come along the narrow streets with the drumming and everything like this, and there's fireworks being let off, and as I said, and all the other bits and pieces, all the other elements, and coloured smoke and flares and God knows what else. And he had to keep reassuring his son, "Oh, this is good, isn't it? Oh, see, that wasn't too bad, that isn't too loud, is it?" I can just imagine having to do that myself, exactly what my father had to do to me all those years ago. And I vividly remember these sort of torches being thrown into the on the ground, left afterwards, and I remember treading on one in an old Wellington boot and melting the bottom of my shoe, as it was, the boot as it was. But anyway, this is going to be I know this is going to go on for a long time, so you'd be excused if you don't want to stay for the whole length. But standing there watching this go by, and the procession, because the narrow streets, it keeps getting caught up, and it sort of backs up to it, and then stop and they start again. But as they're going along, as I said, they're letting off these fireworks, and they had these big metal containers, like waste bins, I suppose, and there's fires in them, and they've got holes around the bottom, and what they get these big, like firecracker type things, like Chinese firecrackers, big whole blocks of them, which they sort of get out of a special cabinet, which is obviously airtight or fireproof or whatever. Get them out, throw them into this this bucket of the fire, and it just creates an incredible noise which is reverberating around within the bucket itself, and then it's reverberating around the houses as well and bouncing off, and there's the light and everything, and it's ear-splitting volume. But some of the other things they do, they set off like these just explosive banger type things, as we would call them, just bang explosions, and some of them were very close to us, and it got backed up a little bit, and they were sending these things off, and the noise was absolutely phenomenal. In fact, when I went to bed last night, my ears were ringing because of this, and it really was piercing. Some of the kids and some of the other people actually had like headphones on, earplugs in, because they knew what was coming. Yes, I knew what was coming, but I've forgotten how much it would be concentrated in the sort of narrow confines of those particular streets. But the point being of the whole story, I suppose, is that I was standing there with the other people, and there was this young lady sort of stood next to me. As I said, we'd arrived pretty much at the same time, and she was taking video the same that I was. I was videoing quite a lot of it, and I expect you'll see some video coming, you know, whenever, but I'll get round to it, because I recorded sort of half an hour or so, and recorded the procession twice, and then watched it later. But with all these sort of banging and crashing and all that, and everyone was put the ears over there, and they were sort of going backwards, you know, because you could see what was going to happen sometimes. And there was that sort of camaraderie, and you're sort of smiling and go, oh, that's loud, and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, carried on and moved off. Never actually spoke to this person at the time. I moved off, and towards the end of the procession, I sort of walked down the road to follow the Latin band, because they were at the back of the procession itself. And this person appeared a couple of times and walked past a couple of times, and I went off and tried to get a drink in a pub in the old part of town there, very near where I was standing. Absolutely impossible. The people spilled out onto the streets everywhere, and it was 4 deep at the bar, smashing pub, and I stayed for as long as I could, and I thought, nope, I'm not going to get a drink here. So I wandered off, and I went into another part of the old town, a different street altogether, where the procession doesn't go, as it happens, and went into another pub. I eventually got served in there, and as I just about to leave that pub, this person turned up again. And I nearly said to them at the time, "No, you following me around," in a jokey sort of way, you know. I didn't, as it happened, but I walked off. Anyway, last night, went to bed, and all this sort of stuff's going on in your head, with the ringing in your ears and the memories of all that type of thing. And I never thought anything of that person again, but had this quite a vivid dream, and this person appeared in the dream. And I'm not sure whether there's a combination of actually the dream itself, which I said was pretty vivid, and also you lay awake. I woke up this morning and it's still sort of reverberating in your head type of thing, and you start thinking about it. Well, what was all that about? Why did that happen? You know, you start analysing the dreams, etc. And maybe it's a good idea to put them down on pen to paper, or put them out in something like this. Maybe someone can interpret what this is all about. I don't know. And so this person was there, and we did actually get chatting in that particular in the dream itself, and standing outside in exactly the same place, because sometimes the things change, don't they? It's never quite the same thing, but that's why I said it was so vivid, because it was actually there where I was at the time when I saw this person again. And started talking, and we were talking about a video type of thing, and what are you doing, and then that sort of understanding. I can't remember really much about the conversation, but the thing that sticks in my mind is that the person actually turned around to me at one point in the conversation, which I find is sort of the weird bit, and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm gay." and I thought, well, what? You know, afterwards thinking about it, what on earth was that all about? And thinking about this afterwards, the only thing, because I can't remember, that was pretty much the end of the dream. I seem to remember, apart from a little bit, because I think my reaction at the time within the dream was, "Oh, that's good. I'm pleased about that." And I think the reason for that was, and maybe this is what I want other people to answer this particularly, I suppose, is there's always that sort of element. I think it doesn't matter how old you are, but it probably obviously wanes the older you are. But when you meet someone from the opposite sex, there's always that sort of tension. There's always that sort of underlying sort of sexual tension there. So whether you want it to be there or whether you don't, from either side, that is this going somewhere? You know, is this conversation going somewhere? We might be talking innocently about this and that and all that, you know, about video and what we're doing on that particular day, and talking about lives in general. But there's that little hint there of maybe something else is going to happen. And I think that's what my reaction was to the person who said, "Yeah, by the way, I'm gay. Maybe that, from their point of view, as I said, this is only a dream, but from their point of view, they were actually saying, by the way, you know, if that's what your idea is, don't forget about it, because it's not going down. This is my position, and that's it. But my reaction was, well, thank God for that, in my view, because that stops everything. That means that now we can just talk one to one. There's none of that sort of underlying sexual tension, if it was ever there or if it was ever going to be there. That's now gone. We can actually just talk to each other, and there's no temptation from my point. Not that I've got any intention of doing that. Make that perfectly plain straight away. But you never know what's going to happen with these sort of temptations. And, you know, strange things have happened. We all know of circumstances where those things have happened, whether it be to you or whether it be to somebody you know or whatever. But it gets away from that. So my thought was whether sometimes it's very hard to have a sensible and proper relationship with someone from the opposite sex, unless you're gay, of course, and maybe somebody else, somebody who is can talk about this from the other side of it, I suppose. Is that because there is always that there. I can think of people that I know. I've always enjoyed the company of women for obvious reasons, but I've always enjoyed the company of women as well, because I find them interesting. They're interesting to talk to. They come at things from a different angle. I'm an inquisitive person. I'm interested in the way that other people think and view things, etc. So to me, that's quite interesting. But there is sometimes a suspicion, even from other people, that you talk to people and you get to know people. How well can you have a particular friendship, unless it's there's nothing there at all. There's no sort of sexual spark or tension or any interest whatsoever, and that sort of whole idea is out the window, and you can put it to one side and you can just get on with being friends. And I think there's a great boundary there sometimes that stops people having very good relationships because of that particular reason. And that's what I'd like to know, whether that's what other people think, because I think after what happened with that dream, it just sort of carried on, and great, you know, and you just started talking one to one, just one person to another, about something you had a common interest in, and you could just go. And I seem to remember we exchanged, I usually carry my little business card thing around or something, and I found that great. And you could explain that to someone. I think, actually thinking about it now, that the dream did go on, and I seem to remember that talking to my wife about it afterwards, because there's that sort of element of this person, though, is interested in the video as much as my wife is interested in what I do, and I show her the odd video. She doesn't understand, she's not bothered with that, and that's absolutely fine. But this was someone who understood about that type of thing, who you could talk to. And as I've talked about before, maybe this is an element of that dream, and why it's there is it's very hard to talk about these passions to someone who doesn't understand, and it's good to have someone that you can talk to about these passions, and probably that's why that element was in that dream as well. So this is a work in progress. But I'd love to know what other people think. If you've got friends like that because there's the sort of the gay aspect comes into it, that it sort of changes the relationship that you have. There's none of that sort of tension. I know people that are like that. I have sort of gay friends at work or whatever it might be, and there's no element of that. You know, you can just talk to them and have really good, meaningful conversations without anybody, whether it be you, the other person, or anybody from the outside, especially if someone's connected with you. There's no element, well, you know, why are they such good friends? You know, there's no sort of innuendo from other people, because they know, no, that's not going to happen. You know, but that's gone. Forget that side of it. And as I said, you can just get down to having a good, sensible, decent friendship. And especially this day and age where things are a bit freer and looser, I suppose, in the way that things work, maybe morals quite as good as what they used to be in the past, that these things happen quicker. Sexual relationships happen a lot quicker than what they used to do. There you go. So wanted to put that out. Just thought I'd mention that and just relay something that happened to me. But once again, it gets you thinking. It starts you thinking about that whole business of relationships and intersex relationships or whatever, and you know, the sort of the gay straight relationships, if you see what I mean. I wonder what it is also, whether there's any tension. Thinking about this afterwards, I went out for a run this morning, and this was sort of going through my head as well. So that's why that sort of confusion as to what's real and what was dream state, if you see what I mean. Whether there's any tension between a straight guy and a gay guy, you know, normally there wouldn't possibly be, but whether that could come into it as well, and also a straight girl and a gay girl as well, whether there's anything like that as well. So discuss, as I said, interesting times, and maybe if I have any more dreams I can actually remember, because isn't that one of the frustrations with dreams? You wake up and you can remember snippets of it, you know it was a great dream, but unless you write it down or think about it or continue it within your head somehow or another, it just goes, it's gone forever. Exactly the reason why you should write it down or do something like this and try and keep it. Normally, if I'd have had a dream like that, it would have gone hours ago, but because I thought about it and it's got me thinking about it since, I think that's the reason that it stayed there. So there you go, and I'll have a review of this and see whether it's appropriate to be putting out for the wider public. But if I do, as I said, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, experiences, anything like that. So anyway, thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.